Good morning, this is Rob from GRAF, and today we're going to be talking on a slightly different subject, not how to do things right in Africa, but how things can go very badly wrong. Today we're going to be talking about the monkey nut scheme. Let me fire up my PowerPoint and get going. So the monkey nut scheme, well, it was just nuts. What was the monkey nut scheme? It was a plan by the post-Second World War Labour government to solve a problem with availability of food. There was food rationing right through the Second World War, and it continued after the end of the Second World War. There was a desperate shortage of cereals for bread, meat, protein, eggs, dairy, and fibers for producing clothes. What happened? Well, the monkey nut plan. The United Africa Company, which was part of the wider Unilever Group and larger Unilever Group, came to the post-Second World War Labour government with this plan to produce monkey nuts, or as it was rebranded, because it sounded more professional, ground nut scheme in East Africa in Tanzania. Post-Second World War, the Labour government decided they needed to change the way they managed the colonies. And they had this idea that they'd invest capital and expertise and training and create a win-win situation for the colonies. The colonies would help feed Britain, and they would build up their expertise in agriculture and agricultural base and their balance of trade. So it was a three-pronged solution. It was genius, really. First of all, the ground nuts, the monkey nuts, would be processed and the oil would be extracted to produce edible oils or edible fats. Secondly, there was a new patent technique of producing fiber from protein. So the remaining monkey nut residue, protein residue, would be transferred using this new scientific technique into fiber to produce clothing and help solve the clothing rationing. And finally, the forage and leafy residue left over from the crop could be used for animal feed. Win, win, win all round. So what was the plan? Well, the Cabinet Office approved the plan, and the plan was to import lots of machinery. They picked up machinery from the Philippines, from America, from Canada, bulldozers and plant and agricultural tractors. They even imported a load of war surplus Sherman tanks. These Sherman tanks had been altered by Vickers to have a bulldozer blade in the front, perfect for clearing trees. They identified 3.2 million acres on the map in Tanzania, and the plan was to clear this of bush and trees and plant ground nuts and harvest them, and then process them and produce the oil and the fiber in Scotland, and they'd have all this livestock feed left over in Tanzania. The execution, well, it didn't quite go to plan. First of all, when they imported all the plant and equipment and machinery, the port in Dar es Salaam got completely congested, so they had to start building a new port. Then there was the issue of transporting everything up to the designated area, so they had to build a new railway line. However, in the wet season the first year, that was washed out by flooding, and they had to resort to the dirt roads, which everyone knows in Africa are an absolute nightmare. When they started to clear the land, well, the elephants and the rhinoceroses that called it their home, they weren't terribly impressed. And there was multiple instances of charging elephants and rhinos, which caused havoc. And then, of course, the trees they were clearing, a lot of them were the hollow baobab trees. And the hollows were used by bees to keep their nests or to build their nests. So there was multiple people got absolutely murdered by bee stings. The success of the project? Well, it didn't quite go to plan. After the first year, they planted 7,500 acres of groundnuts. And that was an absolute nightmare, an absolute struggle. But the Cabinet Office agreed to throw an awful lot more money at the project and considered it just to be teething problems. So they carried on. However, they did start reducing the target area from 3.2 million acres in stages until in the end, eventually, they had a target of only 50,000 acres. Apparently, they managed to clear 47,000 acres, so they got near the target, but it's never been recorded how many acres they actually planted out. After 2 years, they had harvested a massive 2,000 tons of groundnuts. However, this was actually less than the amount of groundnut seed stock that they'd sent into the country in the first place. What went wrong? Well, there was absolutely no planning or preparation of any sort. There was no feasibility study conducted. No one actually checked out whether it was suitable soil for growing groundnuts in. It was just a monumental disaster from start to finish. In the end, the government had spent £47 million on the project. They kept throwing money at it, trying to solve the problems, which is never what you want to do. What was wrong? Well, first of all, the soil type was completely wrong. It was heavy clay. The rainfall was way under what they'd expected. The head clay was so heavy, actually, that when they were building half London, the town where the 2,000 British workers and 32,000 locals were housed, all they had to do was apply minimal amounts of cement to the topsoil, and they had extremely hard and solid bricks suitable for structural building. When they discovered the rainfall wasn't going to be grown enough to grow their groundnuts, they decided to drill boreholes. They struck water down 125 feet, but it was absolutely laden with salts, was completely useless for human consumption, and again, completely useless for irrigation. So the key thing was planning and preparation was completely lacking. And when they started to hit problems, they threw more and more money at it, which you'll find often actually digs your hole deeper rather than gets you out of the hole. Anyone wants to comment on the groundnut scheme? Yeah, just drop me a line. The one thing it did provide was lots of humour. Apparently for years afterwards in local constituency Labour meetings, it was very simple to get the whole room rolling around in the aisles in laughter just by someone shouting out the word groundnuts. Anyone wants to talk about this or other problems with agricultural schemes in Africa or how to avoid them? Just drop me a line on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.